Today, I want to talk about how to create atmosphere in our painting using value and color. Because we work on a canvas or paper that's flat, so we need to use values and colors to create that illusion of depth in our painting. Today we are talking about how to achieve the sense of atmosphere in your painting. And by atmosphere, I mean the idea that you feel like you can walk into the painting and on into the background. Like this painting here by John Carlson, American painter, early 20th century, wrote a great book, John Carlson's Guide to Landscape Painting. So if you paint and don't have that one, you should get it. He has a painting here where he's using values and colors to give you that feeling that you could walk into the foreground here on this path, across this valley of snow, into the trees, and on back into the mountains. You really feel like you'd kind of fall into the painting. So the idea of atmosphere or atmospheric perspective is the idea of depth in your painting. And you can achieve it by different ways. This is atmospheric perspective. You can also do it with linear perspective, which I'm really not going to talk about much at all. I'm going to stick with atmospheric. But here, it's a painting by Alfred Sisley, French Impressionist. And here he's using the bridge. Both sides of the bridge, or the edges of the bridge, recede back into the distance to one point somewhere on the horizon line. And that's called one-point perspective. And that's linear perspective, and that pulls you into the painting. He also has some atmospheric perspective in that the figure here is a lot darker than the background trees, or somewhat darker. And that gives a sense of perspective. Not a lot of value change there to give you that sense of perspective. It's more the linear perspective at work here. Here's another one by Sisley. The road, both sides of the road lead back and meet on one point on the horizon line. Again, 1 point perspective. You can also have 2 point perspective, but this is 1 point perspective. And it's that road that pulls you into the painting that gives it a sense of depth. Last one here. This is Monet. And here Claude is using the lines on the bridge and the lines on the pillars of the bridge. They're getting smaller and they're receding back. If we had an imaginary line that just keeps going, it would go to some point on the horizon. And that's how he's creating that sense of depth. But we want to use atmospheric perspective. Again, that feeling that you can walk into the painting. And we do it in two ways, probably more than two ways, but at least the two main ones are value and color. And here he's using the idea that the darkest darks are up front. And then as like-minded objects, in other words, dark trees, as they go back, they get lighter and lighter. So you have the dark tree here in front. That's the darkest. You have a group of trees in kind of the middle ground. They're next, and then these, and then those. Now, obviously, not everything gets darker as it goes back. Snow's going to stay pretty light. But everything being equal, it gets lighter as it goes back. And that gives you a sense of atmosphere in your painting. But then also color. Color gets cooler as it goes back, or you could say bluer. If we think of the colors we have to use, let's say on the color wheel, the main colors are the primary colors, red, yellow, and blue. Blue is the color that recedes the most. If I paint my background in blue, it's going to look like it goes into the distance. If I paint things in yellow, it's really going to come forward. So it's the combination of those two. Objects that are a lot warmer or have some yellow in them, like these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 colors, red, orange, orange, yellow, and yellow green. they all have some kind of yellow in them. That's going to be warmer, and that's going to be closer to the foreground than everything with blue in it. Blue, green, blue, blue, violet, violet, red, violet, all have blue in them. And those would be more the background colors. Now, that being said, I could have an orange mountain in the distance, and I would have to add some blue, blue, violet, violet to it to make it recede and go back. Or I could have a yellow aspen tree way in the distance. I just have to add some violet to the yellow to make it recede. So bluer or cooler colors will pull all colors into the background. And yellow orange colors will pull all colors forward if they dominate in the color. So that's the idea. Warmer colors come forward, cooler colors go back. And when you contrast warm against cool colors, you're going to get depth in your painting when it comes to color. Now here's another John Carlson. And here he's using mostly value because the colors aren't that different. It's a cloudy day, winter. So he's using more muted, unsaturated color, kind of a grayish palette. And he's using more complementary colors. I don't think he's using black at all. He might have some black in there, but using more complements or close to complements like a blue and burnt sienna or green and red, violet or yellow, or violet and yellow. Those are complements and they create grayer colors. But here he's using the darks in the tree trunks, especially the dark accents that really come forward. Then in the background, the darks are a lot lighter. And the color's a bit more muted. He's got stronger color on the tree trunks. He's got reds, greens, some cooler colors, but predominantly the tree trunk is darker and warmer in color. The background is a lot lighter and predominantly cooler, more on the bluish or blue-gray side. So that creates that sense of atmosphere here. And it is a matter of illusion, because one of the problems we have is we use photographs. And if we follow the photograph too literally, we're going to lose that value change, things getting lighter as they go back, and temperature change to some degree, because the camera does not record colors or values very well all the time. Sometimes you'll luck out and get a good photograph that has a good value and temperature change. But most of the time not. So you have to paint what you know. I know I want these hills in the background to go back, so I'm going to make them lighter. And predominantly, they're going to be cooler. And if I follow a photograph, especially if it's a black and white photograph, that doesn't help me much. So you have to understand that warm, cool color contrast to create that sense of depth. And it is an illusion because we're working on a flat surface. So here, this is another John Carlson. He's got these areas in the mountains in the background. Some of it's warm. He's got some orange areas in here, some warm greens, but predominantly it's kind of a grayish blue-green, grayish green, more on the blue side. Now it's not straight blue, it's subtle, but up front we have the darker values. And so this is more of a value-oriented depth because these trees are really dark. The background mountains are really light. And that, I think, is the main reason that really separates. But he does have those spots of a lot cooler color in the background, and that pushes that back. Plus, the colors also get more muted most of the time. So any background colors are going to be a little grayer than the foreground colors. And up front, he's got some stronger reds, red oranges, greens, kind of warmer greens. But it's the value that really pulls this forward. And it's the warmer snow. The snow has a bit more yellow orange in it in front, and it has more blue violet in the background. So really pushing that idea. Now this painting, this is by Edward Compton, and it's more value change because it's pretty gray. Blue and orange maybe to create the gray, or yellow and violet, or he might have just used black and white. I don't know. There's a little bit of warmth in some of these grays, but the shadows are a lot lighter, and it's this contrast of these dark trees here and these dark accents on the fallen trunk and the rocks that really shove those mountains back. If these trees weren't here and these dark accents weren't there, there wouldn't be much depth. Now, the yellow green grass or yellow orange green grass does pull the foreground hill forward, so that helps a lot, but it's these dark accents that really do it. And it's not so much of getting the background light and cool enough, it has to be that relationship of the background and foreground. So without these dark trees, it really wouldn't throw those mountains back. So you have to have both the foreground and the background relationships. It's kind of a comparison. I can compare how dark this tree is to how light the background is. And that's the key, just really shove or create that contrast between the foreground trees and the background rocks. Now I have some paintings by Chauncey Ryder, kind of an American tonalist / impressionist, and it's a real nice painting here. And he's really pushing the color. I doubt the cliffs in the background are that blue, but that real bluish color does stay back there. And again, he's not copying what he sees. He's probably painted this outside. He's not copying what he sees. He's creating the idea of, I want this bluer because I want it to really go back. And that contrast of really blue-violet contrasts the yellow-orange, red-orange of the foreground. And it's that contrast, that comparison between the two that really creates the depth, as well as how dark these darks are. Now it's pretty dark back in here, so he's probably losing some depth by getting this dark. If he would have lightened up to about this value, it'd probably have a bit more depth. But who am I to criticize Chauncey Ryder? But beautiful painting, nice colors, more color saturation in the foreground, a lot more muted in the background, a lot more variation of color and contrast in the foreground. Not as much contrast in the background because you don't have the real strong darks or light lights. It's another Chauncey Ryder, just not so much the blue mountains. The blue mountains obviously really shoot back there. You can get a little bit of gray warmth in them so that the shadow of the mountain becomes transparent and you can see what's going on inside there. Because one value on the mountains kind of flattens them, but the minute he adds that second value, it creates a little bit of depth inside the mountain. But he creates the depth in the whole painting by getting the stronger colors warmer up in here, a little darker, and then the lighter colors back in here. This is still pretty warm because it's sunlit, but it's not nearly as warm as the oranges and yellow oranges down here. And then, of course, the blue. Mountains really make it recede. And value-wise, the foreground trees really dark. Middle ground trees a lot lighter, and then the mountains lighter yet. Now here's a painting by Emile Claus. He was a French painter. Early 20th century, maybe late 19th. And a lot of depth in this painting, both color and value. The darkest darks are in and around the figure, but the strongest color is, there's no color as strong as this blue, and the warmth of the hair, a lot darker than even the yellow of the foliage in the background. But things get gradually cooler. You got green grass with blue highlights in front, but then you got bluish gray and kind of a grayish violet in the background. So everything's gradually getting cooler. It's subtle. It's not a strong contrast of warm foreground, cool background, because it's backlit. So everything that's upright, the trees, the smaller shrubbery, the figure, they're all in shadow. So the tree trunks are going to be darker than the figure for the most part, but the color is a lot stronger and the accents are a lot darker on the figure. And that pulls it forward. And the sharper edges on the figure as well. But these small dark accents in the hair, little bits on the clothes, and underneath the apron and around the figure in the grass, that pulls it forward, and you don't have anything that dark in the background. This is another Emil Klaus. You get the sense of the green and yellow green in the foreground, and then the blue violet and the muted yellow foliage in the background. Of course, the blue violet hill back there is farther away. But the dark accents also really help. There's some dark accents in the middle ground here too, but in and around the ducks and the dark accents in the grass really pull it forward. Again, it's subtle in Emil Klaus's paintings. He doesn't blast it at us, that strong contrast of warm and cool. Does with the dark and the light. The dark and the light is very strong. One last one of Emil Klaus. Very high key, so the darks aren't very dark, and the lights are really light. So everything is lighter. Shadows are lighter, and the lights are lighter. But the shadows are more busy up front, less busy in the background, and a bit darker up front. Not quite as dark in the haystacks in the background. Also has a bit of one-point perspective going back. This line of trees kind of follows an irregular line back to the horizon line, which pulls you back. But you see how light and blue-green the trees are in the background. Very atmospheric. And again, backlit. A lot of backlit paintings can be a high key, again, meaning all the values are a lot lighter. Still have strong contrast, but everything's lighter. Now we'll take a look at Emile Groupé. He was a New England painter, early mid-20th century. And here you can see you got kind of linear perspective with the river. It has, I don't know how many vanishing points this would have, this bank. Vanishing point would go off to the left, these would go off to the right, but it's these lines on the bank of the river that kind of pull you back, and that's linear perspective. But the snow getting cooler, the trees getting cooler and lighter as they recede, plus the trees in the foreground being so much darker creates that atmospheric effect. And again, you have to push it if you're using photography, because photography won't always pick that up. So get out of the habit of copying the photograph exactly. Paint what you know, or paint what you want to achieve in the painting. If you want more depth, you have to create it. And that means thinking outside the box compared to the photograph. Here's another Emile Groupé. This might be a little... No? Again, a little bit of 1 point, 2 point perspective on the road. The road does pull you back. But you can see the layer of trees, rooftops, and the trees are darkest in front, and then just gradually getting them lighter till they're fairly a bluish gray to just a lighter gray to just lighter yet gray. And that really sets up that atmosphere. But a lot of contrast between foreground trees, middle ground trees, and then the middle ground and the background, and then the background and the really background. I mean, it really goes back. And he's trying to suggest fog. Imagine early morning fog. So he's really pushing the contrast here. Here again, it's a bit more midday. The sun's not real low, but he's kind of looking into the sun a little bit. So all the upright shapes, trees, the walls on the bridge, the mountains, the walls on the houses, they're all dark, and everything flat and slanted is lighter. But the darks gradually get lighter. And in this case, he makes them bluer, fairly strong blue. Didn't mute it. And again, I think the color you use and the intensity can be kind of a personal choice. If I want stronger color in my painting, I can make it more saturated. Or I can, if I want more color harmony and more muted color, I can mute the colors more than I see. So color choice and color saturation is up to the artist, because you're trying to achieve some kind of atmosphere or feeling in the landscape. That's what we're after, some kind of feeling. One more Emile Group A, because they did this so well. Dark trees and the values getting lighter. And using the really warm stuff in the foreground. And I don't know, the orange foliage might not have been there, but he's using that orange to pull these foreground trees forward so that it really contrasts the blue in the background mountains. Now this is George Bellows. He was an ashcan painter, early 20th century. And here you have the 1-point perspective, the linear going back there. I guess I meant to show this earlier as 1-point perspective. But it does have atmospheric in that you got the real strong reflected light under the bridge. The warmish red violet, and the strong color and the dark values up front, and then the darks gradually getting lighter and colors getting grayer as they recede. Another one here. This is John Otis Adams. He was an Indiana painter. Some glare because the paint was so thick. This was in a museum, an old mansion where they had a huge collection of the Indiana Impressionists. And this is a great painting. High key, the shadows aren't real dark. The shadows are lighter and the lights are lighter. So he really goes blue in that background mountains. Not a lot of value change, but there's a lot of temperature change. The yellow, orange, and orange foliage on the left, and the darker values of the haystacks and the figure pull that forward. And it has something going on that helps to remember. He's got the yellow in the field and the trees in the foreground. Then in the background, the yellow disappears. And what you're left with is red and blue. So you got some blue, you got some red, some violet, but not much yellow back there. And then in the background trees, the reds disappeared and you're left with just blue. And if you remember that, that helps in creating the atmosphere or depth. Just remember that yellow is the first color to fade as the distance goes back. Then you have red and blue, and then gradually the red fades and all you have is blue. And that really helps with understanding how to create some depth. Now here's one of my paintings. Picked out a few that where I've really tried to push the depth. This is in Arizona. And really pushing these background, somewhat backlit. The sun is in front of me over to the left. Really pushing these blue-green to make them really separate from the middle ground trees, which are cottonwoods that are really yellow-green, yellow-orange. So not a big value jump between the trees and the background mountain, but the temperature really pushes that back. So everything in the background, while there might be some other colors, there's green, there's some blue-green, some blue. Everything has blue in it to make it stay back. Even these bare trees, these bare cottonwoods, have some blue in it that's more of a reddish violet. And then the real darks up front pulls the foreground forward. Now here I don't have a lot of depth between this middle ground and the foreground. I think value-wise I do. But these yellow aspens are really warm and strong, and they really separate from the background aspens, background snow and trees. Same thing with the dark of these pine trees in front compared to the background pine trees that really stay back there because they're just a muted blue and very light compared to the pine trees. Then some real dark accents kind of pulls this stuff forward, and the busyness in the warm yellow-green grass. Now here everything has a lot of blue in it, even the foreground, but I've pushed some color in kind of the middle ground here and some of the foliage on the foreground trees to kind of pull that forward. And then I have the blue-green mountains, snow-covered mountains in the background. but it's the dark pine tree and the dark trunks and some dark accents in the foreground that really separate the foreground from the background. And you really have to calculate how much contrast you need and decide how much contrast. So you decide how much depth or atmosphere you want in your painting. So it is a matter of you deciding, not just copying the camera. And lastly here, I really push these background mountains blue. Not a lot of depth between the trees and the background aspens and yellow-green grass back in here. A little bit value-wise, but not much. It's more in the background mountains. Now here I have pine trees that are the darkest right here. Well, the horse and rider here are the darkest in these. But this is a pretty big shape and pretty dark. And then the aspens in the foreground are a lot lighter. So that breaks that dark up front, lighter as it goes back, because they're two different trees. This is a yellow aspen, so it can't be darker than the pine tree that's in shadow. But the aspens are a lot warmer, and that's what pulls them forward. So in this case, the value doesn't work to create depth. It's the yellow-orange of the foliage that pulls the aspens forward. So remember two things, value and color, to create atmosphere. And there's also things like edges and detail and color saturation we really didn't talk too much about. But those are the two main things, and that really gives you the sense of creating your own atmosphere in your painting.